committee meeting. I'm Councilmember Mitchell England. I want to thank you for being here today. Today is Wednesday, May 23rd, and we have a quorum. We've got Councilmember Buscaino and Mitchell Farrell. Thank you for being here. I know I've spoken to the others that are on their way as well. So with that, let's just go ahead and jump right into the public comment. We have first the multiple comment cards. Mr. Previn, come on up on, Eric, you're on items 4, 1, 2, 5, and 6, or in order, 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. Being that there are 6 items and you skip number 3, we'll add that as well if you want to speak on it.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Eric Previn. I'm from CD2, as you know. And first of all, I think it's a nice gesture to provide a kind of an affirmative action for the lost ones, you know, for folks who may have lost officers in the family to enter the program. And I feel like that kind of consideration could be appropriate and is appropriate. So thank you. You know, the second item is about bike registration. Here again, I appreciate what you're trying to do, because there are bicycle thefts, and a small tag on a bike could help law enforcement retrieve those bicycles. But I think what you should be looking at, Mr. Englander, is the idea of bicycle insurance, because as you know, the pulsating liability we've been facing for people pitching into potholes and getting badly injured out in your district. I think you remember the Yao case and certainly the Godefroy case. So bicycle insurance would protect the city from enormous payouts that are not commensurate with the liability that we've been, unfortunately, because of this, not this, but budget and finance. I know Kretz is shuffling over to get here. Mr. Rue is not here either. Now, the LAPD BMW program has not been a resounding success, although we're increasing the mileage on the units that we have. And this is, again, Mr. O'Farrell, don't worry, it's for non-patrol. So this is just, I just want to make sure that they're still going to be able to exercise a real vehicle to get to an emergency. But these electric vehicles do require a lot of infrastructure, and I know the city and Mayor Garcetti is making a big effort to get that done. I'm a little perplexed, given all of our financial needs, why we have to lead in this category, but that's what we're doing. Now, item number 5 is your training item. Here, this is what it's all about. And the question is there any way to find a training that's not post? Because the post organization has been a little mired, unfortunately, sir, with there's allegations up the yin-yang about that group. And I just think that if we could find a way to get the officers the best possible.
All right, so you have your 1 minute for general public comment.
And whenever I think of training, I think of the instruments that the officers use. And the body-worn cameras are being considered at LASD right now. And I know you've been a big advocate and champion and backdoor dealer for the Axon program. And the 4,400 tasers that were stuffed in the back of that truck. Now, as everybody remembers, when they changed the name from Taser to Axon, Buscaino remembers, they said, hey, great news. Anybody who wants to try these cameras out can get a 1-year free of charge. Now, guys like me love to hear that. And when we hear that after just paying $69 or $70 million a month or two earlier, we go, hey, we want the rebate too. And so there's the public of Los Angeles saying to our great leaders in the law enforcement department, and Chief Scott, who's up in San Francisco, is currently holding the line on some egregious rules that the PPL up there is trying to get pushed through. But we want that rebate, sir, and we need the real leaders, and that includes you, sir. I'm not talking about those idiots grandstanding all over the place with fraudulent patriotism. I'm talking about you, to get up there and say, hey, guys, we made a great deal. Give us the 1 year. That's $7 million that we can put into the pockets of officers who are on the street.
Thank you very much. Cheryl? And you've got general public comment, and did you fill out one for another item as well?
Just general comment.
Just 1 minute for general public comment. Okay.
Hi, Cheryl Cashman. I'm in CD2. I'm in the Valley. And I'm commenting on the fireworks flyers, the folders that I provided in front of you. There's a series of flyers in there. The orange one, which My Safe LA put together along with the fire department, that's a public safety campaign for children in schools. That is not an illegal fireworks campaign. The following flyers underneath that orange one are examples of illegal fireworks flyers, like these that clearly say illegal. They say the city fireworks are crossed out. Fireworks like the orange one aren't splashing for everyone to see. We need these types of flyers. The two campaigns are separate, an illegal fireworks flyer and a flyer that basically is for information for schools. This is important. This targets the people who are buying and spending hundreds of dollars on the fireworks and lighting them. The orange flyer is not something that we as citizens can print out, take to problem homes, and say, hey, don't do fireworks. We need something like this.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much. Thanks for being here this morning as well.
Sure.
Did you and Mr. Previn
Dennis
carpool?
Rebel,
Oh, okay,
and I would love to talk to any of you if you want to reach out to me.
fantastic. Thank you. All right, colleagues, what I'd like to do is take, that'll conclude enclosed public comment and general public comment for the meeting. And then I'd like to take items 1 through 5 on consent. Unless anybody wants to hear those items, then that'll be the order without objection. Great. And we'll go ahead and hear item 6. Item 6 is the Board of Police Commissioners report relative to the status of the BMW i3 electric fleet vehicles and where we're at with that. Morning. The first, well, go ahead, introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump.
Good morning, council members. My name is Vartan Yegian. I'm the Assistant Commanding Officer of Administrative Services Bureau. And Tom, you can go ahead and represent yourself.
Good morning. I'm Tom Brennan. I'm the Commanding Officer of Facilities Management Division for the LAPD.
Great, excellent. Thank you for being here. So, in order to, I think, ask the proper questions and get into the details on this, I wanted to find out, I asked for a report back during the budget deliberations on the inventory of and the full structure of what do we have, what have we taken possession of, what's left to acquire under this agreement and contract, but also then to delineate the actual years of the vehicle, when we received, not put in service, but when we received the vehicle and took possession, and then also the mileage of each vehicle. So a spreadsheet of that, and I don't know if that's yet been provided.
We have the report available to us. We will provide it to you as soon as I get back to the office.
We were hoping to have it for the meeting. Okay, so we don't have it yet.
I can verbally talk about the report if you want.
Why don't we get into what we'll do is we'll end up tabling it and bringing this back to committee so we can have that discussion. But why don't we talk a little bit about the fact that what we keep hearing, or certainly what I keep hearing, is that these vehicles simply, the officers don't want to drive them and haven't been. Some of the nightmares that I've heard, for example, when they're being pushed to drive them, and they'll finally drive them, or we'll have volunteers drive them, they'll get to a station to go then charge them because they don't have a long capacity and the infrastructure is not even there to charge them, and all of a sudden there's 2 or 3 already being charged and they've got to wait 2 hours to recharge their vehicle and they're stuck. And we keep hearing these issues, and it sounded like it was well intended, but we put the cart before the horse. We acquired all these vehicles before putting in the infrastructure or testing them with various divisions and with various functions of specific details and duties of some of our sworn in civilians that would be driving them to see, are they even compatible and do they like them? And from what I hear and the reports that I'm getting back from the divisions is that they don't want them. So what we did in the budget instruction is we actually already moved 25 of the vehicles out of LAPD into building and safety. I don't know if you are aware of that.
I'm aware of it.
I think they're good in the right place with the right folks. Building and safety is excited to have these. And so I don't think it's all for naught, and I think there's an opportunity to look at redeploying them through different departments that could utilize them, since we're now on the hook and paying for them. So walk me through sort of all of that as a conversation.
Sure. I will.
I know I put a lot out there, and I know that it wasn't you guys that went out there and said, let's go do this. This came from wherever it came from, and you inherit it, and you're deploying them as instructed, and so I get that. I appreciate it. So sort of walk me through where we're at.
Thank you. Your questions have multiple questions, so
They do.
I'd like to try to walk through in a way that it makes sense and it's easier to understand the process.
Okay. Great.
So at first, I'd like to reserve and not talk about giving up the 25 cars to Bureau of Services, because that is a new request, and we're still looking into that.
Right.
But I'll talk to you about the last 2 years, what we've done in the process of electrifying our fleet. So as you know, the report that we submitted in 2015, the mayor and even California's governor had propositions that we need to look forward to electrify our existing fleets. So that was the catalyst of putting us on notice that we need to do something about looking at where can we electrify our cars. So we did at LAPD research and identify close to 500 vehicles that are mainly used for administrative services. And most of these vehicles have or have been or are being used for short driving distances, but many times during the day. So that was a perfect fit for us to identify that electric cars can match that performance, because they do travel short distances, and they do travel many times during the day. And after the research was completed, we identified that we can house close to 300 electric vehicles in Los Angeles Police Department's fleet. So that was the beginning. So our process was to go out to bid and find the best available electric vehicle, and so is the infrastructure that comes with it. Many vendors participated, included Ford, Nissan, Chrysler, BMW, and BMW happened to beat all the other vendors and win the contract with us. Next, we also acquired the contract through procurement processes, the Greenlots, which is the vendor to put up the infrastructure for us. And the plan was to come up with three-phase approach. We didn't want to electrify all the vehicles at one time. We wanted to approach the process in three phases, which was to purchase 100 cars first, learn from it, lease another 100 cars, and then lease the last 300 vehicles. And the reason why we chose leasing process is because, first, it was less expensive to lease the vehicles rather than to put a lot of infrastructure in purchasing vehicles. Second, as you know, electric vehicles are advancing in technology. In fact, I can give you the story. In 2015, when we were looking for electric vehicles, they could only match 80 miles for the whole range, one charge. Next generation is 130 miles, and today we're talking about over 200 miles. So the vehicles, if we purchased in the city that has a life of 7 to 10 or 15 years, these vehicles would be 15 years or 12 years obsolete from the year one. So we decided that leasing is much better program. With the leasing program also, we included vehicle maintenance and repairs, because this is a completely new technology. Even though it is automotive technology, we have one of the best fleet management systems in the city, but our mechanics are not ready to work on electric vehicles. And electric vehicles can be also very dangerous to maintain. So we also thought having a lease program that helps us to maintain the vehicles also takes the burden away from our mechanics and gives us the opportunity the next 3-4 years to learn and transact and then be the best in the business, even in electric vehicle repairs. So the challenge is electric vehicles themselves has a range anxiety issue. And I understand all the complaints. I've heard many complaints that people don't want to drive the electric vehicles. And we've never forced employees to drive electric vehicles. We strategically placed the electric vehicles in places where they could first learn the application of electric vehicles, learn the strategy of how to use electric vehicles in everyday business, support them with the charging stations. And also, while we were doing that, the first 6-7 months...
And I just interrupt for 1 second. if we can add to the report back what charging stations have been installed and where and when.
We could.
So
yes.
Absolutely.
where and when. Yeah, it would be
Yes.
great. Okay, sorry.
I can verbally quickly tell you we have installed 104 charging stations at Main Street facilities, which is right across the Parker's.
But I want to be able to analyze it and look at the...
Fair enough. We can give you all the details on the charging stations.
So on paper, and I think what you've spelled out, certainly on paper, makes sense. In reality, they really aren't being utilized. I know you're hearing a lot of the complaints as well. I get it. And it's not just the media. I mean, we're really hearing real live complaints. One of the other issues that I've heard, too, is that they can't really roll 3 deep. You can't put a passenger in the back seat of these. There's just no room. So hearing all kinds of issues, and that's why I was wondering what field testing was actually done before we deployed them rather than just the paper concept.
Sure. We tested the electric vehicles for 6 months, various type of brands.
But I mean, who tested them?
The fleet operations and some of our police officers.
Some of the officers.
Yes. And we also took the vehicle to our EVOC center, where our
Right.
Professional officers test all our vehicles. At the time, we knew that the electric vehicles are compact, small vehicles. So
The officers that tested them, if you can report back on what some of that testing was as well. Were they field officers? Were they in different divisions? Were they in different bureaus? What was the methodology of that testing?
Okay.
Good enough. Thanks. Okay, I want to just turn it over to some of my other colleagues, too.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for the report. Were you finished? Did you have more to add?
I am finished. If you're satisfied with what I have given you so far, I'll be happy. I mean, there were many questions, and I don't know how far
There were many. I think I'm more interested in seeing actual documents and writing coming back.
Okay, and I have a few questions, too. So
we could, yeah.
currently, the cars that you have, are they 2018? Or in other words, what's the average mileage right now per charge? Are you still dealing with cars that only have 100? Or are you dealing with cars that have over 200?
Currently, we have 200 vehicles.
I mean, miles per charge.
For miles per charge, so the first group of cars when we leased, the first initial 100 cars, they came with 80 miles range.
Are those now out of the fleet, or are they still, some of those still in?
No, they have one more year to go.
One more
Next
okay.
year, this time, already they will be phasing out.
The reason I'm asking that is I'm driving an EV that has about 225 miles per charge. It's a Chevy Bolt. It seats 4 very comfortably. And I can't imagine ever driving a spontaneous combustion engine car again, ever. They seem like jalopies compared to an electric vehicle. However, granted, you're going to need, the technology will need to keep advancing. And I can imagine if you get up to the kinds of miles that my electric car gets, and the fact that it goes from 0 to 60 unbelievably quickly, I could imagine once the technology catches up with the need that officers are going to want to drive these as well once a few other sort of, I guess, technological breakthroughs occur. So that was the first thing. I'm very hopeful for this technology, but of course it has to work with the real-life needs of the LAPD. What percentage of cars are used for administrative non-emergency purposes, and what percentage of the cars that you're leasing are actually used in the field for squad cars or emergency responses?
So I'll answer the first question, if I may, and then I'll answer the second question. And if I forget, please help me to remember. So the first question is electric vehicles based on our tests. And let me say something about me. I've been in automotive field for 32 years. I know some things about the cars. Electric vehicles are very impressive. They're the best cars, pound for pound, if we were to compare internal combustion engines. They outmatch them. And most importantly, they're clean, and they are less expensive to maintain and repair. So by far, they're good cars. Now, when we were doing the research for the electric cars, In fact, our i3s are about the same size as the Bolt. Bolt was not available at the time. So now, 2 years later, you can see the advancement.
Of course.
So all of these cars are used for administrative purpose. None of these cars are used for any field or emergency applications.
But they could be someday.
They could be someday, and we're testing electric vehicles right now, looking forward the next 5 or 6 or 10 years. Can we use them for patrol function? Those tests are being done, and we're learning a lot from current administrative fleet, what type of dynamics and behaviors electric vehicles produce. We're learning so much about it, and there are some negative aspects that we can overcome, but there's so many positive aspects that outweighs any challenges that we have. We just need to be patient, and we need to give the system a chance to mature. Automotive industry is flourished in late 1800s, and the electric vehicles are just beginning. They're very different vehicles, and we need to learn, we need to test, we will learn from our mistakes somewhat, but I don't believe these vehicles are as negative as they're being portrayed by some of the users.
I think it's the first generation that only gave you 80 miles. I think that's the biggest issue. But if you have one that gets over 200 miles per charge, that's a whole different conversation.
Correct. But when we phased in the vehicles, we replaced vehicles that were never driven more than 6,000 miles annually. Or they were driven between 2,000 to 6,000 miles annually. Most of their trips were between 15 to 30 miles on a daily basis. So using that model, placing the electric vehicles in that field, it made sense. So we didn't ask our users to use these vehicles to drive hundreds of miles on a daily basis. So we put the vehicles in a process where they replaced vehicles that were already not being used for long-distance driving.
And did I hear you correctly when you said EVs are more dangerous to maintain? Did you use the word dangerous?
It is dangerous because there is high voltage. And it is dangerous any car to maintain. If you make a mistake, you could injure yourself. There's a lot of moving parts.
And is that danger, does that come during the maintenance part when it's offline and technicians are actually working to maintain the car?
Correct.
Because it involves electric charges while working on the car? Is that
Correct. When they're exposing the vehicle to repair the components, they're exposed to high voltage. Even though there are a lot of safeties in place, but there are a lot of signs to warn the mechanics to wear specific gloves, to have specific knowledge, because you have thousands of volts that could actually strike the person working on the vehicle. So this type of training is already being administered to our mechanics so they can learn and acclimate in this environment.
So the whole automotive industry, as more electric vehicles make their way into everyday use, have to go through what I hope is a certified training program.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then lastly, are you working very closely with the LADWP because they are in the process of building out hundreds and hundreds of charging stations across the city? Are you partnering with them to get more charging stations in police facilities?
I'm going to ask Tom to explain that because he is working on that diligently.
On the, as we rolled these out, we put in 100 chargers at Main Street parking structure. And last year, we started putting chargers at those facilities that were as far out to deal with the range anxiety. This year, we've got another 15 facilities that will have chargers to deal with that whole issue of the range anxiety. We are working with DWP as well as the rest of the city family. There are different programs that are available. Some of them require the chargers to be available to the public, which if we're trying to get our fleet vehicles charged is not necessarily compatible with that program. We have installed chargers available to the public under a grant from the California Energy Commission. We did that last year throughout the city. They had to be in our facilities that had off-street public parking. So that kind of narrowed down where we could put those. We are in conversations with DWP about expanding the charging program that we have to make vehicle chargers available for the public and for employees who have personal cars that need to be charged. The part of the delay that we've been experiencing is planning for the expansion of this technology, because a level 2 charger will take 4 hours to charge one of these BMWs. A DC fast charger will take 20 minutes to give it an 80% charge. So in looking at that and talking about the future technology that's going to be there, we've been working with DWP to evaluate the electrical systems at the facilities in order to make sure that the infrastructure that we're putting in now is not limiting us to what we can do in the future. So in some instances, we're putting in an 800 volt panel or an 800 amp panel that we don't have existing capacity on the electrical service for, knowing that we're going to be working with DWP to bring additional service that will charge that panel. That way we're not spending money on a 400 amp panel that we can service now, and in 3 years I'm sitting back here asking for more money to take that panel out and replace it with something that's larger.
So you're thinking ahead,
So
long view, taking the long view. You and I were just talking about the northeast garage on the way in, and how about it's about to go out to RFP, a parking structure for the LAPD Northeast Division. Are you thinking in terms of that parking structure, making sure that it has the required voltage for the future needs of charging?
Yes.
And enough bays
When we built the new facility, we started with 7 level 2 chargers that were brought into the department's network in the last 2 months. When the new parking structure is put in, there will be additional chargers. We're working on the design right now on exactly what that level of power will be. There isn't enough capacity to do what we want to do, but we are designing it to have that capacity to be able to be brought in and add electricity. We're doing that basically with every facility that we're looking at. It's a challenge with the older facilities.
Of course, you have to retrofit, and maybe they weren't built, and there's a lot of
They weren't built to
infrastructure.
support the number of computers that we have.
Yeah, much less.
The technology at the time was a correcting selectric 2, and now there's a computer on everybody's desk. So there's that, there's body cameras, there's in-car video, there's a number of electrical demands that have been put on the systems. So we are working with General Services, the Bureau of Engineering, and DWP to ensure that, and I will use Maria Cardenas's statement, that we don't blow up our buildings. So we're in partnership with everybody. DWP has been very cooperative in helping us with making those determinations. The other conversations that we're having with them right now, as it relates to the vehicle chargers, is looking to the future of putting in solar panels. The current return on investment, if the city, we're putting in the Main Street parking structure, solar panels, we're into the design phase for that. The city is paying for that. If we're looking at long-term return on the investment for putting in an enormous solar display in one of our solar array in one of our parking structures, it looks like it was going to take us more than 30 years to actually get a return on that investment. If we have DWP put it in, which would allow them then to meet some of their requirements to generate solar power within the city limits, we're in conversation with them about what kind of infrastructure support we could get to upgrade the electrical systems at no cost, or to have some part of that offset the electrical use at those facilities. So we're having a large conversation with everybody involved in that, including the mayor's office.
Okay, and I suggest making the Northeast Garage, since it's about to go out to RFP, a case study in bringing those resources to bear, leveraging those resources. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And just to add to that, too, we do have 2 full solar projects going on at 2 of the divisions right now, so to cover the parking lots. And that was for originally, and I think it was a mistake, they put down one of the stations, but it was actually, it's Topanga Station and Devonshire Station, because they don't have parking structures, but they have large parking lots. as opposed to a structure. And so those are what I think is being worked on right now for that.
The two projects that were listed in the budget was Mission
Correct.
Station.
It was changed in the budget.
But Mission, and we would like to talk about that. I
Yeah,
know
so
it's
we
coming
should.
back.
It's not on-
I know it's coming back.
Yes, but-
And I will actually address that in the report that we send back.
Right.
Mission, when it was built, actually has a canopy on the parking structure that is ready to take solar panels. And then I would like to discuss Topanga and Devonshire further as far as what the possibilities are
Right.
for
Okay.
that generation.
Yeah, that's great. We should do that right away because we were hoping it would be done by this summer. So we should hopefully meet, maybe even offline. We'll unplug and meet offline and,
Yes, sir.
and talk about that.
Yeah, no, I just, I appreciate the conversation. I was sharing with my colleagues that I actually tried the electric vehicle and had it issued to me the week that the first fire broke out, the La Tuna fire. And I discovered very quickly how limited the capacity was in the times of an emergency, which makes it very difficult. So the intended use, depending upon what the individual that's assigned to the vehicle, makes all the difference in the world. But I actually want to commend you for not going through a purchase versus a lease on it, only because it's highly evolving technology. When I think about the range in particular, given even just my experience with it, the lack of infrastructure to charge, there were many times where I couldn't make it back to the command post and I had to run over to the mission station for a charge because in the Northeast Valley we have very limited access to charging stations. And all that, even with, we have so many agencies from General Services to the Department of Water and Power and the Bureau of Street Lighting that piloted the charging stations on our city infrastructure, on our street lights. We still don't have the access and even the fast chargers. The fast chargers, we don't have electrical panels at many of our city facilities. Even if we talk about the demand here at City Hall with all the capacity, our electrical panels cannot accommodate the charges that we need just for the city fleet that many of the electeds are utilizing right now. We have very limited capacity. So I know there's just a number of struggles and challenges to meet all of those needs all at the same time. And I'm excited to hear that the Department of Building and Safety might potentially be some of the users, because again, I think, it all depends on the intended use and it makes it very difficult. But it is a very quickly evolving technology. And in the service agreements, I guess my question is, because in the I3s and their performance vehicles, has there been any considerations in terms of the service agreements that might come with some of these particular vehicles, that might just be something that you consider including in that rather than, have we evaluated the value that might be added in pursuing it that way with the manufacturer versus us bringing in that all of that expertise in-house, and how that, in terms of the certification of the mechanics and whatnot, because of the evolving technology?
Of course. We do have, and I'm proud to say, one of the best fleet management system in the law enforcement business. And the fleet managers are very proud of ownership and delivering fleet resources to Great Los Angeles Police Department. But like any other technology, when we face in such a haste and also evolvement so fast that it takes time to learn the technology. So our mechanics, even though they're one of the most talented, they are still learning the electrification process. We have certified some of them already. We will certify all of them in time. In fact, the same struggle is taking place even in automotive industry outside of the government space. If you go to the dealerships, where they are the most advanced and up to technology maintaining the vehicles for particular brands, even they have isolated electric vehicle shop separately and have one or two technicians dedicated for electrification. But we can't afford to do that in our city because we're spread over 480 miles across the city We have close to 24 service stations just for LAPD. Every mechanic needs to know everything that they need to know to service our cars. So we're taking a broader approach. It's going to take time for us to get there. Therefore, the service agreement made sense. But the nice thing about electric cars, they just don't get a lot of repair needs. You know, they just keep working.
Very little maintenance.
They have very few parts to break down. And so it gives us a chance to live up to that one day.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, indicated in your report, drastic savings in the maintenance and repair costs of these types of vehicles. I sit on the Air Quality Management Board, the AQMD board, almost every month. One of my colleagues on the board, a South Pasadena council member, Mike Cacchiotti, indicates and highlights law enforcement agencies using these types of vehicles. And I don't recall a time where he actually brought forward a BMW i3. So I do know that there are other make and models. Have we looked at other make and models in the market?
Yes, of course. Since we embarked on this process in 2015, we have to go, it's not that far away, right? We were doing a lot of research and looking at the models, what manufacturers offer what. Pretty much at that time, it was BMW i3, Ford Focus, Nissan Leaf that were capable to deliver what we could at the cost that we could afford. We didn't look at Tesla because and then Porsche at the time had very superior electric vehicles. But today, almost every manufacturer, if they don't have electric vehicle, they will have it within 18 to 20 months.
Yeah.
In fact, I can reveal to you, I won't give you the brand because I have a non-disclosure statement. In short period of time, within 6 or 8 months, you will see car manufacturers offering us electric pickup trucks, electric vans ranging over 200 miles with same load capacity as their peers in non-electric field. So this is evolving faster than I imagined, who has been to be, so to speak, in this industry for many years.
Yeah.
So there is at least 6 or 7 brands today, if we go to the market,
Yeah.
we could pick an electric car that would probably outmatch what we had in 2015.
Also, in planning for the future of electric cars, we also have to plan for the green infrastructure that needs to be provided in order to sustain the fleet. We've taken that into consideration.
Absolutely.
I mean, very similar to what we're trying to do at the port with electrifying our trucks. But the long hauls, we have to make sure we strategically place the charging stations around this region. No similar to the city of Los Angeles. What's the plan moving forward?
So I can discuss a little bit what we've done and what we're doing right now and what we're looking forward to do with the city and all the other departments. So absolutely, if we could equate electric cars to internal combustion engines, you need fuel tanks, right? You need gas stations. So equally, we need charging stations. The advantage of charging stations, you could pop them up anywhere you want, and they don't have to be very expensive to dig the grounds, and so to speak, and then deal with EPA. But the challenge with the electrification process and charging stations is the grid needs to support that. So what we've done is strategically envisioned where do we want our electric vehicles to operate. We've done that in 2015. And we said, those are the charging stations, those are the stations that need to get the charging stations. We started with the Main Street facilities where we installed 104 charging stations because we know that building will support close to 200 electric vehicles one day in the future, maybe in the near future. So we build every station that we build looking forward the next 5 or 6 years. We're not just putting the charging stations to meet our needs today because putting the conduit, putting the electricity, putting the panels, it's expensive. We want to do it one time, and we want to live with that for the next 10, 15 years. So that's what we're doing right now. We've already put 104 charging stations in one location. We put in 9 more charging stations, charging police divisions with at least 3 to 4 charging stations, and we got another 15 to complete. We're in the process to do that. There is a competition now because when we were doing the charging stations, there was no other city department doing that. Now, every city department is competing for the same vendor to place the charging stations. So now we find ourselves, it's a good competition that everyone wants to put charging stations, charging parking lots. So it slows down the process a little bit, but we will get there. So Department Water and Power is doing it. General Services, who is responsible for the rest of the fleet.
Like in parks, I understand
Like
they're
in
moving
parks.
forward.
So they're all working on this.
Right. And I appreciate that. This fact that we're dealing with first responders here, God forbid, if as you're rolling to a code 3 call and the vehicle's not charged, then we have folks on the other line waiting.
So on the first responders, I want to put this at ease. We have 5,000 vehicles in LAPD. 2,500 are emergency vehicles. None of those vehicles are considered for electrification yet. We're thinking about the future,
Looking at the future, right?
looking at the future,
Right.
but none of them are considered.
Yeah, and these smaller agencies that my colleague on the AQMD board, showcases, they're smaller agencies, but they're not 400 square mile, over 400 square mile cities that we're talking about here. So you also have to plan for, in talking to the chairman, the importance of making sure that these electric stations have sufficient backup as well at each of the
Yes.
police stations. I'm assuming that's already been
Yes.
considered.
Every charging station that we have in any location has a backup plan. If in case we lose the power grid, the generator will kick in, not only provide vital electricity to the critical areas, like certain offices, certain computers, but we're ensuring that the generators will provide electricity to our charging stations. So we will not, even though most of the electric vehicles will be used for administrative purposes, but in case we have emergencies, we need every vehicle we can
Sure.
still charge those vehicles and use them as we need it.
And is the department looking at taking advantage of some of the incentives that are provided by AQMD and Air Resources Board, Carl Moyer program?
Absolutely. Every time we list the vehicles from BMW, we got $6,000 credit. And then we also got $2,500 cash back from EPA, and we got the cash and gave it to fiscal operations. So we are taking all the advantage we can. And in fact, EPA went along with us. They said, because you're purchasing many cars and we can't give you, credit for all the cars, they wanted to give only 10 or 15 car credit, but they actually upped that to 100 cars. So they're working with us. They're all.
I would also, aside from EPA, encourage the department to look at some of the grant programs that both AQMD and ARB provide.
We're looking at that. I know we have a group of folks that look for all the grants, and AQMD provided funding, but I can't speak to that because I'm not involved.
Yeah.
We are, from the standpoint of the chargers that are being put in, there are a variety of grant programs, and we're looking at the best ways that we can take advantage of that on the infrastructure side as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Rowe, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think all the questions I asked, but I just had a couple of quick questions about, so what's the monthly lease the city's paying?
The monthly lease averages about $400 per vehicle.
And the, 400, is that the market rate? Is that what?
Yes, it is.
Oh.
Well, so the electric, we could get cheaper if we if we go individually and lease a vehicle from, let's say, BMW. But the $400 includes the maintenance, and then also includes the telematics that every car comes with. That's another piece that we added to our electric vehicles. It has telematics that tells the fleet manager where the cars are, how they're being used, what's the charge level, where they're charging their vehicles. It assists in managing the electric vehicles and enhances the utilization of the vehicles in a long run.
So when you say maintenance costs for the city or maintenance costs for?
So the maintenance cost includes part of the lease. So whenever something goes wrong with the car, whether it's in warranty or outside of warranty, or the vehicle needs to go back to the shop to be, do the regular maintenance, preventive maintenance, it's included in the lease program.
Okay. And then the charging stations, the actual charging stations, who installs them? Does the city install them or?
The charging stations is, we hired a company called Green Lots,
Okay.
and they're the ones who have contract with us, and they also have a state contract. They're assisting us in installing all the charging stations.
And we pay for that?
Yes, the city pays for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple other things. So I think one of what I was looking for in the report backs, and let me just give you the reason, and maybe you can just connect the dots for us when we meet, is how we deployed the vehicles when we got them, when we didn't have perhaps the infrastructure in place yet to charge them, right? And so if we were pushing them out to divisions and we didn't have enough chargers in place, and or while we're getting more of the vehicles now and taking delivery, there was an unanticipated demand by city agencies that were also now competing for those same vendors to make the installations for the chargers. And so I will be curious if you can look at it and come back and let me know, is if we wrote it into the lease that while we may take possession of one of the vehicles, we don't pay for it until it's deployed, and we don't deploy it until we have the infrastructure in place. So if there's an unforeseen circumstance, for example, now there's a supply and demand issue of trying to get our vendors out there to install, we don't have cars sitting there that we're actually paying for. And I don't know if that's baked into the lease or not. And so if you can let me know. And if it's not, it's fine. It's a good lesson learned. It's not fine, but it's a good lesson learned to say we should not trigger either payments or warranties or any of those things until we deploy, rather than take possession of.
Okay.
And those are negotiable items.
Yes.
We just, so you know, because a lot of people will look at somebody like they're a little crazy for suggesting that. Like, what vendor would go along with, you can have the goods, but don't worry about paying for it or the warranties kicking in until you deploy them? Most, when they're doing business with in large quantities. Those are, Motorola, for a great example, just did that with their radios. We have full possession of them. We don't begin the warranties, nothing kicks in until we deploy them per radio, per serial. So as an example, that's what I'm interested in getting to. And if we didn't do it, it's a good lesson learned as we start ramping not only these up for PD, but for every department. We need to start looking at those things. I did have one specific question that I want you to look into, because I know, I'm going to guess that it's not something we have. As we are going to have much more demand on these types of vehicles, and as you said, as the technology improves and the mileage improves, we're going to see more and more use, particularly if we start looking at patrol. And you're right, it's probably inevitable in a closer future than we could imagine. One of the things I think we need with that is something similar to, and I hate to put out a vendor or a brand name, but I will because it's the only one I know of. But Tesla, they have an app, and their car as well will tell you not only where the closest charger is, but when it's going to be available and how much time is left on the person at the station charging. Since we're putting in so much infrastructure, city infrastructure, and PD being the lead in the first out the gate, my suggestion, and also having not only the best fleet software, but I'll be honest with you, from what I know, the best fleet managers of any department in LAPD too. So that's a huge compliment to you guys, and it's true. You may want to take the lead on working with the other agencies and ITA and GSD on, if we're putting all of these out there with all the different agencies, and we're going to be relying on our city employees to be driving these, and both, and you're talking about now vans and trucks, and this, we will have a clean fleet make no mistake, 100% in our lifetime, it might behoove us up front right now to start looking at those kind of apps so our city employees will know where they can go and how long they have to wait to charge, because that's one of the concerns that I've already heard back from folks that are using these vehicles. They'll go back to their division to go charge to only find out all the stalls are full and they've got to wait 2 hours, and then they're calling around to find out what other divisions have availability and space to go drive over there to charge and park and wait. And so maybe we can get in front of that, just a suggestion.
I agree with you 100%, Councilmember Englander. I'd like to tell you that we are working with Tesla. In fact, we have one Tesla that we will reveal soon as a...
Well, and I'm not saying that as the vehicle, but even just for our charging stations that we are deploying.
I completely understand. And let me get back to the leasing. I will report on the deployment, and I just like to put you at ease. We are not obligated to lease any vehicle if we're not ready to consume and use it. In fact, when you see the report, deliver date, in-use date, you will be very surprised. It was within 1 or 2 days. We never accepted cars when we felt like we don't have the chargers to put the cars out. We do have some shortcomings, and we're working on improving things. Okay. But none of the vehicles that we got did not perform as good as or as much as the vehicles that they replaced.
Got it.
But there is room to improve. Okay. And I will let you know that your suggestion to work with vendors and create an app for the City of LA electric vehicle users, it's on our radar. We are working with some vendors, right, and we will welcome your assistance when the time comes to champion the cause, to help us to maybe fund. They're not going to be very expensive, but at least to champion the cause that we should do that. Because I see that vision where every city employee, regardless where they drive and what they drive, as long as they're driving an electric vehicle, they should be able to see where all the charging stations are, whether they are available, and reserve the charging station at a certain time and go use it. Right. And then if they're using the vehicles on the charging station, something needs to remind them that their vehicle is ready. They need to come and open it up and take it. Right. All these suggestions that you have, we were thinking about it, and actually in some places outside of City of Los Angeles, people are using it, and we want to mimic that. Great. We'll get there. Yeah. We just need a little bit more time.
So here's what I'd like to do on this, if I could. Rather than keep it in committee and bring you guys back here, because I think we've gone full circle on this, is go ahead and send this to council and move it out. But not schedule it for council. Put a hold on it. We'll let the council president's office know until we get the reports back, and we can have the conversations offline, or if any other members want to ask about them. But if you can provide those reports to the committee so we can attach it to the council file, make it public record, and then we can review them. And so when it comes to council, we can note and file the report, revisit it at any time. But that'll be helpful if you're okay with that. Great.
I'm okay if you're okay.
Colleagues, what I'd like to do then, excuse me, since Mr. Rue is here as well, is reconsider items 1 through 5. So we'll go ahead and reconsider those without objection. And then we'll go ahead and vote on all 6 again without objection, and it's receive and file on 6, and then wait for the report back. That'd be great. Then that'll be the order. Okay, then that concludes this agenda, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much.